My name is Dustin. I've been a Christian for as long as I can remember. I grew up in church. In the past, I've dealt with the sin of sloth, and these are some of the things I've done to deal with it. My parents played music, so music was always a really important part of our lives. And even as an adult, my wife and I moved around the country, and I played on various worship teams just all the time. It's just what I did. It was part of my identity. But somewhere along the lines, during one of our moves, I decided I was going to step away from playing music. I was kind of getting burned out, so I just stepped back from that. I was still involved in church, but not in music. And all of a sudden, 10 years went by. I always thought I could step back into it really quick, be no problem. So fast forward, a year ago, we moved to San Jose from Oregon, and it was right around the time that Toccoa had their grand opening service. We came to Toccoa. It felt like a great place to go. It was near where we lived, aligned with our faith values. And from there, we went out to coffee with Pastor Austin. He shared his story, we shared ours. But one of the things he mentioned in sharing their story is he laid out a vision for Toccoa and how important worship team and worship music, the role they wanted that to play in church. And that one of the main things they were praying for was a worship leader and a worship team. And it was like at that moment, a bell went off in my head, and my heart started beating faster. It was like, what if you are the answer to someone's prayer? I just was getting more excited about it. You know, I went home. The next day, I got out all my gear, my guitar stuff. Hadn't played in years. I thought I could be the answer to somebody's prayer. I got out the guitar, plugged it all in, and started playing, and it was terrible. It was awful. And it was just so discouraging. At that point in time, I knew I was not the answer to anyone's prayer. So, you know, it's really disappointing to look at the gap between, you know, your expectations in that moment of excitement and reality. So, you know, I struggled with it for a long time. I just thought the easy thing to do would be to step back, be like normal in church. I can get involved other places, no problem. But I kept thinking, you know, if you don't step into this now, when are you ever going to do it? This is the perfect opportunity. And I kept coming up with the excuses that you come up with. You're too old, you're too busy, this is going to be too much of a hassle, too much work. But God and I just wrestled with it for about a month, I would say. And finally I got to the point where I felt like this came from God. It was like, don't let your no be the reason that this doesn't happen. And in other words, it was like, this might fail because of some other reason outside of yourself, but don't, you know, take the steps necessary to get yourself playing guitar again. And so I knew I had to get to work. There were some steps I had to take. If you feel like God is telling you to do something, is talk to someone else about it. And it's not necessarily that you want to ask them questions, just tell them the story about, hey, God's talking to me about this. Another aspect of it is I was getting overwhelmed by looking at the whole picture and saying, in order to get to this point, I have 1,000 things I need to do. And that, I think there's a lot of personalities that get overwhelmed. And for me, a lot of times it's helpful just to say, what's one thing? What's one thing I can focus on, and just do that one thing. And just, once you get through that one thing, what's the next thing? What's the next one thing? And a lot of times you don't even get to where you were aiming for originally, but you've gathered skills, experience, which God can use maybe somewhere else. But if you hadn't done those things, then none of it would be possible. I was thinking, I'm doing this similar work to what I was doing 10 years ago. It's just, for some reason back then, it felt like a duty, a chore. I was burned out. And now there's more joy in what I'm doing. And by joy, I don't mean that I'm always in a great mood. It's just that it feels like there's a purpose there, day to day in what I'm doing, the things that I choose to put my hand towards, that there's something behind that.